Hello everyone. I thought we'd try something a little bit different today. Over the last weeks I've been going through a variety of mental health diagnoses, and I've been giving you a lot of information on what certain things are and how as professionals we tell the difference between this diagnosis and that. And I thought this time today we might try something that might be a little bit fun for some of you. I want to invite you today to sit with me in, let's say, an imaginary psychologist chair. And we are going to look at information from certain figures in history and popular literature, in popular culture, and we're going to diagnose them together. So the way that this is going to work is I'm going to provide you in this video with a series of different points, different information, things that could be a clue as to who the individual is that is our client. And from that information, what I want you to do is try and figure out who the client actually is in this scenario, and then put your guesses in the comment section below. And the next video that I release, I'll tell you who that person was, and I'll present you with a new individual. So if you're up for the challenge, stay tuned, and we will start with our imaginary client. So what I want you to do is imagine yourself walking down the street towards a home where you've been asked to go and do an assessment for this individual. This individual was involved in some unsavory activity, and the court wants them to act as a witness, but they're kind of afraid if they put this person on the witness stand that they're going to say something that makes them look like they're not a credible witness. So they want you to go in there and have a look and give your opinion. Now, they've turned to you because the only other option for this person would be Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud tends to give opinions that aren't necessarily as useful for judging a person's sanity, so to speak, than, say, helping them work through trauma and things that affect their lives. And so they've decided Sigmund Freud can, he can focus on developing his theories right now, and we are the ones who are going to visit this individual. So we knock on the door, and the door is opened by a housekeeper. It's a nice looking older lady. She kind of looks you up and down and smiles and says hello, and then sort of shakes her head. And you see, it seems kind of an odd greeting that you get, but you're used to people who are a little uncomfortable when you come around because, psychologists and all, people worry that you're going to read their mind. And so she leads you up the stairs to a room in the house. And the door to the room, when you open it, you can hardly get it open because of the clutter. There's so much stuff in front of or behind the door that you kind of have to shimmy your way in. The housekeeper says not very much, and she shuts the door behind you and just disappears. And you find yourself standing in a room full of all sorts of things, papers and books and chemistry equipment and a fireplace that's burning, and you feel like there's just nowhere to focus, nowhere to look because there's so much stuff, and you actually for a moment can't even find your client. And you look around, and eventually you spy somebody sprawled out in a housecoat on a chair in the middle of the room, almost buried underneath papers and different things, and he's smoking a cigar. And so you sit down and you decide you're going to start an interview with this individual. So you walk over and say hello, and you get no response. You try again, and you still get no response. Eventually, after trying a few times, you think, well, this is going to be a failure. You're going to have to go back and tell the people who asked for the assessment this isn't going to work. So you start walking towards the door, and that's when your client lifts up his head, looks at you, and says, "What do you want?" And thus begins your interview. Now, during your interview, you notice the following things. first of all, the individual, in spite of the rooms that you're in being an absolute disaster, is very neatly dressed, very presentable, even in his housecoat, which is unusual. But his housecoat matches his slippers, and his pajamas are, say, a complementary color. And he's very neatly groomed, and it really doesn't look like someone who just got out of bed. This individual, as you talk to him, reveals to you that he has no idea why you're here to see him. There's nobody who could possibly know any more about him than he knows about himself. And he's already told the individuals involved in the legal proceedings that he's perfectly sane, he's of sound mind, his judgment is good, and he has no reason to talk to you. But after a little bit of cajoling and playing to his ego a little bit, you start getting a history. This individual grew up in the country. His father was an artist. His mother didn't work. He has one brother, but he never sees this brother. In fact, this individual hardly ever sees anyone. He makes mention of a roommate, but you don't meet the roommate while you're there. But outside of that, this individual seems to have nobody in their lives, and they seem to be completely content with that. In fact, there seems to be kind of an apathy towards other individuals, or even the idea of a relationship. He doesn't have a girlfriend. He has no interest in meeting a girlfriend or even ever having a wife or family. He's focused on his work. That is his most important activity, and that is what he has dedicated his life to. As you work your way through this explanation of what he values and why he has no relationships, you start to realize that you're probably dealing with someone who has a schizoid personality disorder, and someone who truly feels that they have no time in their life for anyone. You also discover that this individual has a history of sporadic drug use, specifically cocaine, and this person uses these drugs when they're feeling bored, when there's nothing to do, when they're not necessarily working per se. Now, when they're working, that's when this individual feels the most energized, and it almost looks like it could be a bipolar diagnosis. However, because the individual's mood changes rely on whether or not he is working and not on the chemical changes in his body, you quickly rule that out. So primarily you're looking at a schizoid personality disorder at present. The more you talk to this individual, the more you find that he's a very logical individual, very intelligent. You're thinking maybe he has an eidetic memory, but you're not quite sure. And you didn't bring anything with you to test the concept, because it really wasn't important to the question that the legal team has posed to you. You do find, however, that this person is able to logically carry on a conversation and support every supposition that they make. You have no question as to whether or not this individual knows and understands what they're talking about. And in the end, you feel that in spite of the personality disorder, this individual would be a competent witness for the prosecution in the upcoming case. So you return to the offices of the lawyer who's working for the prosecution, and you report your findings, and you inform them that in spite of some of the challenges this individual poses, that he will be an acceptable witness. However, he will not be socially inappropriate, or he will be socially inappropriate on the stand, probably quite a maddening person to ask questions to, and that he's probably not going to show the proper respect or the proper behavior that is expected in an English courtroom. So after you've presented your findings, now it's time for the individuals who are running or setting up the trial to make the decision. So, as a psychologist, that's your case study. That's who you're looking at. There's clues in there as to time frame, as to location, as to the character of the individual, and even to some of the more popular or well-known traits this individual has. So if you're willing to participate in this, make sure you put your guess in the comments down there, and the next video I post, I will tell you who this is, and you can decide if you were correct or if you missed it by a mile, and if you're interested in trying another character next time. Have a great